Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi fiqh class. We are doing the kitab known as I'ala Sunan of Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah, and we are still dealing with the chapters regarding Tahara. We are doing the chapter of Tayammum. So tonight, inshallah ta'ala, it's one of the extra sub-chapters of that particular section that we are doing. So let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we are here on page 330, starting from hadith number 303, under the chapter Babu anna Faaqidut Tahoorayn la tasihhu salatahu fayajibu alayhi al-qada. A very famous mas'ala known as Faaqidut Tahoorayn. When a person happens to be in a situation when he has none of the Tahoorayn. What is Tahoorayn? It's a dual form. It means you don't have water, you don't have anything of swale. Sa'idan tayyiba. So when you are in a situation like that, what do you do? So the time of salah comes and there's no let's put it this way, there's no water around and there's no sand. Now, if you live in a desert, obviously it's not so much of an issue. But if you are, for example, living in a glass house, so you can't make tayammum on glass. So somebody locked you up in a glass. Okay, you can break out of the glass, but you get the picture. So you are there, but you have no water and you have nothing of the earth. So there's no brick, there's no sand, there's no clay, there's nothing of that sort. You're stuck in a metal cage, or things of the sort. So you have none of the tahurain. So the time of salah comes and you have no wudu, because maybe they knocked you unconscious, and when you woke up you found yourself in this cage over here. What do? The time of salah is there, but because you can see the sun outside, you can see, hey, the sun is here at its zenith, so this means it's dhuhr time. You see the sun moves a little bit, you say, okay, I need to make my dhuhr salah now. Normally in today's time, people will be worrying about everything besides this salah, but a Muslim looks at salah always. But nonetheless, so now what does it say? It says la tasihhu salatahu, your salah is invalid, so fayajibu alayhi al-qada. So therefore, it is obligatory upon you to make qada of that salah. Let's read the hadith and then we can summarize things later on. So hadith number 303. عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور ولا صدقة من غلول. رواه الجماعة إلا البخاري كذا في نيل الأوطار. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور, that Allah does not accept salah without purification, without purity. So if you're not in a state of tahara, Allah does not accept your salah. Your salah is invalid in simple terms. And likewise, Allah does not accept sadaqah from ghulul. Ghulul is when you have stolen money, for example, from the booty. You've taken part in the battle and everything, but you've stolen of the booty and you kept it there aside before anybody sees it. You pocket it. This is known as ghulul. On the day of Qiyamah, you'll be brought forward with that which you have stolen. So nonetheless, so you think, I pocketed a whole lot of this here now I'm going to give sadaqah with it. For example, you think you're doing good, but Allah does not accept it because it was haram for you to pocket that in the first place. So simply put, when you are in a state and you have no tahara, your salah itself is invalid. I'll read the chapter and then, like I said, I'll summarize what the masail is in that regard. So rawahu al-jama'ah. Al-jama'ah is a term which is used amongst the muhaddithin. When they say al-jama'ah, they mean Imam Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasai, and Ibn Majah. The 6 famous books of hadith, when they refer to all of them reporting a hadith, they say al-jama'ah. But they say illa al-Bukhari. So which means the Jama'ah reported it except for Imam Bukhari, which means Imam Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasai, and Ibn Majah reported it, but Imam Bukhari did not have this hadith. كذا في نيل الأوطار. This is how it's mentioned in نيل الأوطار of Imam Shawkani. Moving on to the next page, it says عن عمران بن حسين رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور ولا صدقة من غلول. رواه الطبراني في الكبير ورجاله رجال الصحيح كذا في مجمع الزوائد. He says, Hadrat Imran ibn Hussein radiallahu anhu, he narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, same hadith like previously, but different Sahabi reporting it now, that Allah does not accept salah without purity, and nor does Allah accept sadaqah from wealth which was stolen. In simple terms, Imam al-Tabarani rahimahullah reports this hadith in Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir, and the Rijal, meaning the narrators of this hadith, Rijal al-Sahih, they are the narrators to be found in the Sahih, meaning Bukhari Muslim. In Bukhari specifically. كذا في مجمع الزوائد. This is how it is mentioned in مجمع الزوائد, the famous kitab مجمع الزوائد. Okay, so hadith is the same as the previous one, so nothing extra to mention on there. Okay, so there's only the two hadith in this chapter. Now, just to recap, in the context when a person finds himself in a situation without any of the Tahoorayn, you have no access to water, you have no access to swale. So like I say, you can think up 110 scenarios. You can be in space, so you have no water with you, you have no swale with you, things of this sort. So different things you can come up with, whichever scenarios you want to imagine up in your mind. Nonetheless, it's a mas'ala that all four madhahib have discussed. So as far as the Hanafi madhab is concerned, in a situation when you are lacking both water and something to make the tayammum with, in that case, when the time of salah comes, you will perform salah despite not having wudu, despite maybe needing a ghusl, but you will perform your salah because you have no water, you have no swale. If you had it, you would have done it, but there is nothing. So you perform your salah. But now, because your salah is invalid, therefore you will make qada. You will not let the time go by saying, well, I have no wudu, I can't make wudu, so it's over and done with. I'll make it when I get to it. You say no. You will make your salah despite not having tahara. That is what the Hanafi ruling is. Some of the other madhahib, they say within the Hanbali madhab, within the Shafi'i madhab, ulama of those madhahib can give what the muftabihi view is of the madhab, but a view which exists in those madhahib is that if you made your salah, then more Hanbali madhab have this opinion that you don't even have to make qada. Amongst the Shafi'i madhab say you have to do it, but you have to make now qada at the same time. But nonetheless, there are multiple opinions existing within the madhahib, but as far as the Hanafi madhab is concerned, because that's what we are focusing here on, Hanafi fiqh, so from a Hanafi perspective, you will make your salah and then you will make your qada. So you may ask the question that why bother making salah when your salah is not valid? We say the reason is because you're showing, and I was actually just answering this question just a couple of minutes ago before class, with somebody asking with regards to performing salah on a plane. When you perform salah on a plane in the sky, now, like I mentioned, you can be traveling on an Emirates airline plane, big plane, maybe you got your own bed over there and things of this sort. So come time for salah, you have enough place to stand up and make your salah, no problem. But now you're flying on a kulula.com plane here in South Africa, a Mango Airlines, something of the sort. You're sitting on the next person's lap, so small the seats are. The next person is laying in your lap in the seat in front, so you are like sardines on top of one another. Obviously, in a case like this, there's not even place for the air hostess to go down the aisle. What's still for you to stand there? So in a case like this, where they don't have place and they don't allow you to stand and perform your salah, what do you do in a case like this here? In this situation, you will sit in your seat and perform your salah. But then when you reach your destination, you will make qada of that salah. The reason is because one of the conditions for the validity of salah is qiyam, being to stand and perform salah. It is an obligation if you have the capability. So while you have the physical health to stand, your salah sitting is invalid. So now if you sit while not being physically incapacitated, your salah is not counted. So therefore, you performed your salah in that manner for the sake of honoring the time of the salah, because your plane was going to fly right through the entire, let's say, the entire Maghrib salah. You in the air before Maghrib comes in. Isha has come in and your plane is still flying. So you haven't gotten off the plane yet. Therefore, in a case like this here, you perform your salah sitting in your seat. When you get to your destination, you make your qada. The reason is because in the event of the plane crashing, and you had made your salah in this manner, you come in the court of Allah with all of your salah being up to date. That's one of the benefits behind it. So in the same manner, when you are in a Faaqidut Tahoorayn situation, when you are in this Faaqidut Tahoorayn situation, you will make your salah. And if you die before coming in front, before having coming in contact with water or soil, then you come in front of Allah and you have not missed a salah, because you did what was within your capability. What was within your capability was to perform your salah. You had no capability for water or for soil, so therefore you did what was, oh Allah, this is what is within my power. I'm doing what is within my power. So you do it for the sake of honoring the salah. So you perform your salah despite not having tahara. In that case, on a good note, and you will make simply your qada when you now come in contact with water or soil. And that's basically the summary of the issue of Faaqidut Tahoorayn when you find yourself in the situation of having no water or soil. All right, let's move on to the next chapter. باب جواز التيمم في الحضر إذا كان الماء بعيدا عنه على ميل أو ميلين. The chapter that it is permissible to make tayammum in a state of hadar. So you have safar and you have hadar. Safar when you are on a journey, hadar when you are a muqim, as we would call it. You're not far out there in the middle of nowhere. He says, إِذَا كَانَ الْمَاءُ بَعِيدًا عَنْهُ. When you are in a situation where water is a far distance away from you. And what is a far distance? على ميل أو ميلين. 1 or 2 miles away, shar'i miles. So water, there's, if I go down this road here, 1 or 2 miles away, I'll get water. So making tayammum in a situation like this is what we are referring to. So let's do the hadith. Hadith number 305. عن نافع عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال: رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم تيمم بموضع يقال له مربد النعم وهو يرى بيوت المدينة. أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك وقال: هذا حديث صحيح تفرد به عمرو بن محمد بن أبي رزين وهو صدوق ولم يخرجاه، وقد أوقفه يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري وغيره عن نافع قال: تيمم ابن عمر على رأس ميل أو ميلين من المدينة فصلى العصر فقدم والشمس مرتفعة ولم يعد الصلاة. قلت: وأقره عليه الذهبي في تلخيصه. Okay, so the hadith over here is reported by Imam Nafi', a freed slave of Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, who said that Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma said, I saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam making tayammum at a place which is known as Mirbadun Na'am. What the hadith of Humurin Na'am, Ni'am. But anyway, that famous hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it's better than what people translate as red camels, humurin na'am. So this is the mirbadun na'am, same thing over here, the same word. It's referring to camels. So anyway, at this place known as mirbadun na'am, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam came here and made tayammum. But when you're standing at Mirbadun Na'am, you are able to see the houses of Medina. You are so close. Now the ulama have differed. Is this place 1 mile or 2 miles out of Medina itself? Hence why the heading of this chapter is ala qadri milin or milain, whether it is 1 or 2 miles away. So we're not talking here about something being 70 miles away. We're talking 1-2 miles. It's like people today will like, why you make a big deal? It's only 2 miles away. So any case, so Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam making tayammum over here. So by virtue of him stating this, he means I saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam make tayammum here and then perform salah and then come into Medina and not make qada. That's what he's essentially saying. أخرجه الحاكم في المستدرك. إمام الحاكم رحمه الله reports this hadith in his مستدرك على الصحيحين, and he says هذا حديث صحيح. Imam al-Hakim grades it as being authentic. تفرد به عمرو بن محمد بن أبي رزين. It comes through, as we would call it, a khabri wahid, through one chain of Amr ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Razin, but he is Saduq. He is a trustworthy narrator. Saduq is one of the terminologies of hadith, which means the narrator is reliable and authentic. So, in other words, he's an authentic narrator. ولم يخرجاه. يخرجاه mean Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahumullah did not report this hadith. Now, if you know what is the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, then you know why he makes the statement all the time. ولم يخرجاه. But in any case, وقد أوقفه يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري. Imam Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari and others, they say that it's actually mawquf, that it's Imam Nafi' saying Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu did this, not that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did this. So he says, according to Imam Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, he said, تيمم ابن عمر على رأس ميل أو ميلين من المدينة. That Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, he made tayammum when he was about 1 or 2 miles. He was just 1 or 2 miles away from Medina. فصلى العصر, and he performed Asr Salah. والشمس مرتفعة, and the sun was high up in the sky. وَلَمْ يُعِيدِ الصَّلَاةِ, and he did not repeat his salah. Now, why is he mentioning all of this? He's saying we were literally like 1-2 miles away from Medina. The sun was still high up. In other words, we had enough time to reach Medina, to make wudu, to make our Asr salah. But instead, we were with enough time to reach the water, we made tayammum, we made our Asr salah, and we entered into Medina, and we never made qada salah. So Imam Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, he says that this is mawquf, meaning it's an action of Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, and it's not attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, from our perspective, we will say that two things to keep in mind here. Number one, there was very few Sahaba radiallahu anhum who were as, you know, what we would say, so paband upon the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma. So when he saw Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam do something, he did it. Finish, end of story. We find an incident in this regard. He's traveling with his freed slave Imam Nafi'. He comes to a particular place in the middle of nowhere. He gets off from his camel, he makes salah. 2 rakat salah, he gets back on and he carry on. Why? I don't know. I was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam reached this place, got down, made salah, and then carried on. So I don't know why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it, but I do it. That's it. That was Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. So obviously, when he did this, by the virtue of who he was, you can say it strengthens also the fact that it is attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even though, regardless of what, like we could see for what Imam Al-Hakim, he says it's a singular chain, but it's all authentic people in the chain, therefore it's authentic. Finish, end of story. You know, we don't have to discuss the intricate nitty-gritty that the muhaddithin have between themselves. From a practical perspective, we say this is what Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu did, and this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did as well. So he says, Qultu, who is here? This is Imam Mulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi. He says, وَأَقَرَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الذَّهَبِ, Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah in his Talkhis. Now, if you have the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim rahimahullah, you find it printed together with the Talkhis of Imam al-Dhahabi. That's what essentially makes the kitab. Nobody uses actually the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim in today's world without the Talkhis of Imam al-Dhahabi being printed to attached to it. So what it means is, as Imam al-Hakim narrates a hadith, Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah will comment at the end, yes, it's authentic. Imam Hakim will now narrate the hadith. He will say, هذا حديث صحيح على شرط البخاري أو على شرط مسلم على شرط الشيخين ولم يخرجاه. It fits the criteria of the authenticity, but they haven't reported it, because that's what a mustadrak is. So obviously, if Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim reported it, it would have had no purpose for him to put it in his kitab. So anyway, so Imam Dhahabi will come and he comment on the hadith and he say, yes, it meets the criteria. In other words, when the iqrar of Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah is found, it means Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah is grading it to be authentic as well. He's agreeing with the grading of Imam Hakim. So even though you may find some ulama who may say that Imam Hakim is mutasahil, he is from the ulama who are but lax in his gradings, but Imam Dhahabi is known as being mu'tadil, middle of the road. So when he grades it as being reliable, finish, end of story. So Imam Dhahabi, in his talkhis of the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, he agrees with it that it's authentic. So one way or the other, the end result is that it is an authentic practice. If you say it was just Hadrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, then that alone is, you know, a source to be followed. because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, إنما أصحابي كالنجوم, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum are like the stars. Whichever of them you follow, you will be guided. No worries in that regard. But nonetheless, we say it is also established that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had done this, and that is where Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma had seen it from. And that's also the end of that chapter. Now, while there's still a little bit of time, let's do the next chapter. It's a short one as well. Babu jawazi tayammumi min sakhratin la ghubara alayha. We touched upon this point previously, or at least I should say, I explained this in but more detail when we started this chapter of tayammum. But here it's put into clear terms. The chapter that it is permissible to make tayammum on a rock where upon there is no sand. So those rocks that feel bald like that, it's smooth, there's no, you can wipe it and you lift your hand up and there's not a grain of sand on it, you can make tayammum on it. That's basically what it's saying. So then let's do the hadith number 306. عن أبي الجهيم ابن الحارث ابن سمة الأنصاري رضي الله عنه أنه سلم على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فلم يرد عليه حتى أقبل على الجدار فمسح بوجهه ويديه ثم رد عليه السلام. رواه البخاري. So this is the hadith we actually just did the other day as well, which is Hazrat Abu Jahaym ibn al-Harith ibn Sima al-Ansari radiyallahu anhu, who said that he made salam. We did this last week. That he made salam to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not reply to his salam. Instead, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam walked towards a wall and touched the wall, wiped his face and his arms, and then replied to his salam. Now, like I say, we explained this in further detail last week. So Zoom has already told us our time is running low. So I'm not going to spend too long on this point. But just to summarize, this was under the chapter of making tayammum for the sake of replying to a person's greeting. Now, you do not necessarily need to be in a state of tahara to reply to a person's greeting, whether your tahara is for wudu or your tahara is for because you are in a state of janaba. In both cases, you are permitted to reply to a person's greeting. But it is more from the kamaliyat, from the perfection of purity, that you do it in a state of having some sort of purification. So even though there was water present, so such a tayammum isn't valid for ghusl and it's not valid for wudu, but it's better than having nothing at all. And it is, just something that just comes to mind right now at this moment. There is a practice, some of the ulama, what they had said is that if you are going to sleep at night, and maybe, for example, you don't have wudu, you're not going to go now and make wudu and get in bed, then in that case, at the very least, make a tayammum and get in bed. Now, like I say, you got your own personal brick or something laying around there. So you touch your brick, you wipe it all your hands off, and you wipe your face, touch it again, brush off any dust if there is, and then you wipe your arms and you're done. And you get in your bed and you sleep. And you are essentially sleeping in a state of semi-tahara, even though that tayammum don't count for anything. But it is better than not having anything at all. So if you can make a wudu, that is best. But if you don't have wudu, then that tayammum is better than sleeping without any form of tahara. So that's something that some of the ulama have stated. So in a like manner, coming to this incident over here, that you can reply to a person's greeting, whether you have whether you're in a state of tahara or not. But it is better to be in a state of tahara when replying. So that was that hadith. So let's move on to the next one. So how does this hadith relate to this chapter? You see, the way it relates is that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam went to the wall and then wiped his face and his hands. And in the hadith, there's no mention of touched, brushed off, touched. And the reason is because what he's essentially saying is that there was no sand on the wall. The wall was smooth, like a rock smooth. So therefore, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam touched it despite there not being sand. So you do not need to touch some beach sand or some swale or something, and then you must see your hands full of sand. You don't need that. As long as it is in jinsil ard, as long as it is from the things of the earth itself. And like I explained, things of the earth, things which does not burn or melt. So, you take your grass, it's from the earth. No, from the earth is swale, the whether you call it swale, whether you call it beach sand, whether you call it limestone, things which are min jinsil ard. These type of things, rock and stuff, clay and things of this sort, this is fine. You make tayammum on it, it's not a problem. Any case, let's do the last hadith before time runs out. Hadith number 307. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا واقع بين أهله فكسل أن يقوم ضرب يده على الحائط فتيمم. رواه الطبراني في الأوسط وفيه بقية ابن الوليد وهو مدلس كذا في مجمع الزوائد. قلت ولكنه لا يضرنا فإن التدليس كالإرسال. وأيضا فقد اعتضد بما رواه البيهقي عنها أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا أجنب فأراد أن ينام توضأ أو تيمم. إسناده حسن كما في فتح الباري. Hadrat Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam إذا واقع بعض أهله, that if Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had slept with one of his wives, فكسل أن يقوم, and then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not wanting to get up now and go make now a ghusl. In that case, then what would Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam do? ضرب يده على الحائط. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would touch the wall, and I explained this last time as well. Touching the wall, the walls at the time had no paint and things of the sort on. When you have a wall which is painted, these paints that we have today, it covers the jinsil ard, it covers your brick, so there's no tayammum on that. The dust and dirt which settles on your wall, that's not the same thing. That's not min jinsil ard, that's just dirty. So if you have an unplastered wall, or you have, like I say, a little sandbox or whatever of the sort, and you have that next to your bed, or just have a little stone over there, and you touch your stone and you make your tayammum, in that case, perfectly fine. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would be, for example, laying in the bed. There was no big king queen size bed with a headboard and everything. You were literally on the floor right by a wall. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would just touch the wall and then fatayammama, and then make tayammum in that way. So what it also tells you here as well, how it relates to the chapter, is that the walls were not peeling with the dust and the sand and stuff like this here. No, when you made it like a mud hut type thing, there's no dust all over the place. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam touched it, wiped his Mubarak face, and then touched it and wiped his arms, and that was it, and the tayammum was complete. It don't count in place of a ghusl that you're supposed to be making, but it is better than not doing anything at all. So this is a practice that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did. So if you are a married person and you happen to find yourself, now whether you are a man or a woman, both can make an amal upon this. So if you find yourself in this situation and you're like, hey, I don't feel like getting up now, maybe it's cold, maybe the geyser is off because we're having load shedding and stuff like this here, so I'm gonna wait till load shedding ends and the geyser heats up, and then I'll make my ghusl, no problem. So then in that case, you decide maybe you're going to go sleep or whatever, then you can make amal upon this with the intention of following the sunnah, and you'll still get rewarded for it too. So anyway, Imam al-Tabarani rahimahullah reports this in Al-Mu'jam al-Awsat, and in the chain of narration is a famous imam by the name of Baqiyya ibn al-Walid, very famous. He's a mudallis. That's about the only thing that is held against Imam Baqiyya ibn al-Walid. But, and this is stated in Majma' al-Zawaid like this. But Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi says, وَلَكِنَّهُ لَا يَضُرُّنَا. But tadlis doesn't harm us from a Hanafi perspective. And I've spoken about this many times now recently, that Hanafi usulul hadith is different from Shafi'i usulul hadith. And most people tend to think that Shafi'i usulul hadith is all that there is. They don't even know there's a difference between madhahib in this regard. So what people know as mustalahul hadith is essentially Shafi'i usul al-hadith, because you're going to be taking Imam Ibn al-Salah, you're going to be taking, for example, Hafiz al-Iraqi, you're going to be taking Imam al-Sakhawi, you're going to be taking Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. These are the Imam who had written kitab on the field of Mustalah al-Hadith. Thus people tend to think this is it. Many Ahnaf in fact have this idea, but the reality is Hanafi and Shafi'i madhahib differs on a lot of definitions between them where hadith is concerned. So in any case, so Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah, he states that tadlis is not a problem for us, because a narration which is Mudallas is like a narration which is mursal. And it is a narration which is mursal, according to the Hanafi and the Maliki madhab, is not a problem at all. And I mentioned this, in fact, just last week, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the first person to mention and make an issue about the irsal was Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Because in the days of old, prior to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, the majority of the people غلب على أهل زمانهم الصدق. Most of the people were truthful. But Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, by the time he came along, he said غلب على أهل زمانه الكذب. That majority of the people are liars. So much had changed in that short space of time. And in reality, they were like shining stars of truthfulness in comparison to people today, but that's how strict the Imam were. And from that point of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, Mursal now ended up being put in a chapter of being weak, whereas in the days prior to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, across the board, Mursal was deemed as being reliable. So in any case, he says, but even if this was not the case, even if this wasn't the case,